Hey guys, it's Melissa here with Rooted Home and Garden. Today I'm going to be talking about different perennial produce that you can actually plant in your garden and you don't have to think about replacing. Now, most plants are annuals and they only grow in a specific season. These plants that I'm going to be stating to you are ones that are actually perennials. At least they are for me in my zone. My zone is 9B. I'm in California, Central Valley, California. And these are perennial produce that you can actually plant in your garden and not have to replace them year after year. So sometimes planting up a vegetable garden can be a little overwhelming with people. Oftentimes you have to plant up your vegetable garden 2 times a year, and sometimes that can just be a little overwhelming. Well, these are different perennials that you don't have to replace after each season. So the first one we're going to start with is asparagus. You can buy asparagus in 2 different forms, either by seed or by crown. A crown is when the roots are already developed. They're actually a year old by this time. Plant those in the ground, and within 3 years of either the crown or by seeds, you're going to start getting a harvest that you can actually cut from. Now, the cool thing about asparagus is that these plants actually live like 20 to 30 years, and the older it is, the more it produces. It is an absolutely amazing plant. Now, I currently do not have asparagus in my garden, and I kick myself every year because I love asparagus. My kids love asparagus. And I've planted it in my garden twice. I planted one in the right location. It did fantastic, but I wanted to put something else in that spot, so I transplanted it to a different location and it died. Now, I'm not sure if all asparagus can't handle transplanting, but mine did not handle it well. The second time I planted asparagus, I planted it in an area where it was just too shady. It didn't get enough sun, so therefore it didn't come back the second year, which was very unfortunate. Now, the thing about asparagus, when it starts to send up fruit the first year, you don't want to pick it. You actually want to leave it on the plant. And the reason why is because it's sending energy straight down to the crown, and that crown needs it to survive. So skip the first year. Don't harvest anything, let it flower. And actually they recommend for the first 2 years to do that as well. Now, if you buy the crowns instead of buying seed, you just saved yourself a whole year because like I said, when you buy it in the crowns, they are already 1 year old. So you've skipped that whole first year. But hold on, even with this 2 years, you want to maybe harvest 1 or 2, but kind of leave the rest on to flower as well, so that by the 3rd year, your roots are completely established and you can harvest every single one of them and you'll be totally fine. Now, I like to harvest my asparagus when the sprigs, is it called a sprig? I don't know if it's actually called a sprig, but that just sounded right to me when I said it. So anyway, when you harvest the sprig, when it's really thin, really bendy, I don't like it when they're nice and thick. When they're really thick, I find them to be very stringy and I don't enjoy eating them that way. But when they're extremely thin and pliable, oh, very tender, very good, and there's no stringiness in it. So if you have a sunny location in your garden, the more sun, the better. 6 hours plus, your asparagus will thrive. Plant number 2, this is artichokes. Artichokes are so expensive at the store. My entire family loves artichokes, so having artichoke plants in my garden is a huge deal for me. In fact, I have 7 plants in my garden, and I don't have them just in the vegetable garden because I have a small yard. I have them dispersed in the flower beds because I think they look so beautiful in the garden. So once again, they need to be in a sunny place. They do grow in zones 7 to 11. They're perennial. So if you're not in zone 7 to 11, unfortunately, it's not going to be a perennial for you. But if you are in these zones, then they are a perennial for you. Now, once you are done harvesting them in end of spring, early summer, your plant is going to look like it's starting to die. It's not dead, I promise. You can just leave it there. You can cut it down to the ground. The roots are still very much alive. It will grow back. Once fall hits or early winter, you're going to start to see the greenness come back again from the ground, and it'll be ready to produce a new crop again in the springtime. Now, on the artichoke plant, if you've never grown it or if you have before and you just felt like you just didn't get enough out of it, artichokes only produce 1 big globe. So if you have lots of little ones on, that's perfectly normal. In the center, you're going to get 1 big globe, and then once that's harvested, it's going to send out different shoots of smaller to medium artichokes, and then that will be your harvest. The plant does grow about 3 to 4 feet tall and wide, so you do want to have some space in, but like I said, I tuck mine in and I just let it overtake that spot because that's how much I need artichokes in my garden. Now, don't forget to eat the little artichokes too because those ones are so delicious. Now, artichoke plants don't last nearly as long as asparagus, but they do last for a good 6 to 7 years. So plant them in your garden, enjoy it. You will be harvesting artichokes the very first year. The Third plant that you want to get planted in your garden are strawberries. Now, I know strawberries seem like an average thing that everybody has, but it's so important to have it. Now, there's two different types of strawberries. There's June-bearing and there's ever-bearing. And I'm going to tell you the difference between the two of them. The June-bearing only produces once a year, and that is typically around June. It is a huge harvest, much bigger than the ever-bearing harvest, and the fruit is much bigger. Saying this out loud makes me realize I need to get some June-bearing plants in my garden because I don't have many. I only have the ever-bearing. Now, the ever-bearing strawberries, they produce pretty much from spring all the way until fall, but in little clusters, just here and there they're going to produce, but you're not going to have one big harvest. Now, the berries are typically smaller, but some of mine are actually quite large, so I'm quite happy with them, but I'll tell you, they are so sweet. Now, strawberries are actually perennials from anywhere between zones 3 to 10, which is extremely cold hardy. They can survive through a lot. Now, I have strawberries in all different spots of my garden that are producing. Some of them are in full sun. Some of them are in part sun. Some of them are in mostly shade. And even though in the mostly shade, I am still getting some berries, not a lot, but I am getting some berries. So they're really versatile. You could tuck them into any flower bed and get berries, which is fantastic. Anytime we can add fruiting perennials to our garden, I think that just makes it a win. The next plant that you need to plant are vining or caneberries. I'm talking about blackberries, boysenberries, raspberries. Those are all different vines or canes that you get from them. Now, these ones you do have to be a little more careful and do a little more thinking before you plant them because these ones do spread. In the right location, they're going to spread all over the place. And maybe you want that, and that's great if you do. But if you don't want that, you want to be just a little more diligent. The more shade it gets, the less berries you're going to get, but the less it'll also spread. If you want to save yourself even the hassle of it, just put it in a pot. And you can stick that in your garden too. It will work out so well for you. I have blackberries in my garden now. Where my blackberries are behind my chicken coop, and they really get very little sun, very little. So I'm not getting the harvest that I should be getting if they were in full sun. However, for me, a little bit is better than none, and something needs to go there, and I want it to be something fruity. So having my blackberries there is a perfect spot, and I love having them there. Now, blackberries actually grow on second year canes. The first year, you're not going to cut those. You're going to leave those alone. The second year, it comes around, then those are going to have the berries, then you can cut those down. Now, I've done it different ways. I've cut them down every 2 years to the ground, and that eliminates any confusion. And I've done that many, many years. And then there's other years where I have picked out, okay, this is an old cane that needs to be cut out, and I've left the new canes. That's a lot more work, but I've done that too. And depending on what you're wanting to get done, either way is fine. There's no wrong answer. Do what works best for you. Boysenberries grow the same way blackberries do. So if you want to grow boysenberries like I do, I love boysenberries, just follow the same rule of thumb as the blackberries. Now, raspberries are just a little bit different here. There are two different varieties of raspberries, the same as there are with strawberries. The first one is called summer bearing. So the summer bearing raspberries actually only grow on the second year canes. You're not going to touch them the first year. You wait for the second year. Once the second year happens, you'll get fruit and you cut those down and you let the first year canes regrow to become the fruit for next year. Then there's also the everbearing. Now the everbearing, it produces two crops, a heavy crop in the fall and a small crop in the summer. So the fall crop happens the first year. Then the second year you get the summer crop. And then it is smaller than the fall crop, but they're massive. And that's what I have. I have everbearing as well. And boy, do I get a ton of fruit off of them. On both of them, actually. I was still picking fruit in the middle of winter. No joke. That's how much mine were producing. Amazing. Now, raspberries typically don't like my type of heat. They do really well in our area, but you do have to provide some afternoon shade. Unfortunately, mine do not get any afternoon shade, and I will say some of my leaves are pretty crispy, but the plant is still alive. They're still producing, they're still doing fine. It's just, it doesn't look as good when it gets all crispy. The next plant, yes, I'm still on berries, and here we go, blueberries. I have a ton of blueberries in my garden. I have 10 blueberry plants in my garden. I love having blueberries. Now, if you live in the Central Valley like I do, growing blueberries can be tricky, but it can be done. A lot of people do recommend putting them in pots. I only have 2 of my berries in pots, and the other ones are in the ground. Now, I have not had issues with that yet because they are acidic loving plants. I keep up with my acidic fertilizers on a regular basis, so I'm hoping I'm doing enough to keep them thriving. Now, I love blueberries so much that I don't care if I have to replace them after a few years. To me, that is fine, as long as I still get the fruit. Now, blueberries grow from zones 3 to 10, so even if you live in a colder area than I do, you can still grow them. Just remember, if your soil is not acidic, to add some acidifier to it so that it keeps producing for you, because what will end up happening is you're just gonna have a green bush and you're not gonna get fruit. We had such a massive harvest with blueberries this season that I was unable to get all of them picked. And that's such a shame, because I just know they're just sitting there on the plants right now, drying up, and that just hurts my soul so much. I don't like that, but you know, vacation was calling and I had to go. So it was one of the things that just didn't get done. The next plant I'm gonna say is sorrel. Sorrel is like a leafy green that grows year round for me. I planted sorrel in my garden, I'd say about 4 years ago. And this thing loves its life. It's in full sun. It grows like a madman. Truly, it's huge. Now, I personally don't eat the sorrel, but I give it to the chickens and the rabbits, and they love this special treat. I cut this thing down a couple of times just to kind of compact it, because it can grow quite large. Within a week, it was just as large again. I was shocked. My husband was very shocked. It loves its life. I have not seen any signs of it fading after all these years. It's going strong and it's very happy. So that's an excellent plant. A lot of people use sorrel for like soups. You want to use the tender leaves, not the giant, great big leaves are more bitter. But a lot of people like it in their soups and stews, so try it out and see if you like it. Another plant you want to plant in your garden is grapes. I have 4 grapevines in my garden, and I have a very small backyard. I do have to keep them trimmed up on a regular basis because they will overtake anything because of how healthy and happy they are. I planted grapes in my garden 3 years ago, and it is now producing so much fruit. Last year was the first year, so its second year I actually got fruit for the first time. I got quite a few clusters. This year, I'm getting so many clusters, and I am so excited. I hope when I get home, they should be ready. And I'm very excited to harvest these grapes. Now, if you decide to grow grapes, this is not one of those plants that you just plant it in the ground and forget about it. It will get out of control. So this definitely is a plant that you're gonna have to actually keep trimmed up and take care of, but that's once a year you really have to do it. If you live in a larger space than I do, you can of course let it keep growing throughout the season. I can't let that happen because it will overtake everything, but it's not a job that I hate. I love trimming it up. First of all, it's beautiful. The plant itself is very ornamental and very beautiful, so I love growing grapes in the garden. Now, the next plants that we're going to be talking about are herbs. If you live in Zone 9B in Central Valley, California, like I do, you can plant herbs. They will become perennials in your garden. Not only do I have herbs in my raised beds, but I also have herbs just growing in the flower beds, and it looks so beautiful. I have oregano and thyme and rosemary and chives. All of those can be used for cooking, and most of those are evergreens for us, which means even in the wintertime, they still look just as beautiful and you can harvest from them. Now, chives, for me at least, are not evergreens. They do go dormant during the wintertime, but they pop right back up in early spring, and so you're really not missing much. Well, guys, that's just a list I have for you. If you want to plant something in your garden that you really don't have to plant twice a year, just constantly changing things out, these are some easy things you can put in your garden that you're still going to get fruit from, and there's not a lot of work to it. All right, guys, see you next time.